We're all familiar with the path of least resistance, and we use that phrase all the time, and we understand exactly what it means. But to not just go down the path of least resistance often means going to the path of most resistance. And that's telling us something. That resistance that we're feeling might be the thing that's actually guiding us to the best solutions. And so we need to develop a new instinct for that. Let's discuss that today on the Daily Dance.
Welcome to the Daily Dance with your host, Brad Richardson.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Daily Dance. I am Brad Richardson, your host, and I appreciate you tuning in and taking the time to spend some time discussing big topics and hopefully making things a little bit better in your world. That's what we're here for. Thank you for whatever platform you're tuning in from. I want to give you a reminder that we are on Rumble. You can find us on X and Locals and YouTube. And I do repost on LinkedIn. Wherever you're finding us, thank you. Would love for everybody to gather on Locals as much as possible, as we're trying to build a community that can be an encouragement, a consistent encouragement as you go through different jobs, different phases of your career, that you can have a group that is there that can go with you as you go from place to place. So before we get into today's subject, we do need to do our daily dance. The daily dance is something we do as an encouragement to ourselves. Yes, you will look a little bit silly. You will feel a little bit silly, probably. Bonus points if you can get someone else at work doing your dance with you, or your department, or even your boss. Kudos to you. So it doesn't have to be anything special. It's just being in motion and getting ourselves going on the hard days as well as the good days. So we're going to take just a few seconds here, and everybody do your dance. There we go. Me hitting wrong buttons. It's all part of the fun. But I hope you all did your dance, got yourself going, and we're ready to dive into something, the type of thing that I really enjoy discussing and getting into. It's an article that I came across, just a short post, actually on Facebook, that carried with it a lot of what I think are a lot of good principles that can be applied in our work lives, in our professional lives, and personal lives as well, but especially the professional application is what I'm seeing in this one. Excuse me. So let me go ahead and bring that up. And this is the article that I found. And again, just a quick post on Facebook. And I'll go through some of these things. And you may not be able to read everything there in the article. I don't know. I apologize if you can't, if it doesn't zoom in enough. But the point of the article was that as Starship, with SpaceX, their Starship, as they've been going through iterations of Starship, and some have blown up, some have had all kinds of failures. They've been getting better and better. But there have been a list of things that they were able to improve and fix. And this article just lists in number 8 through number 1 what was fixed and how it was fixed, and how long it took. Hold on just a second here. There we go. Sound should be much better now. Another little technical difficulty. But uh, yeah, so listing 1 through 8. And it was uh, an excellent list because if you go from 8 to 7 to 6, as you go on up, he's listing them from the shortest fix to the longest fix. What was easiest to fix, and then what took the longest time. And 8 through 2, if I'm remembering correctly, are mechanical fixes. They are material fixes, things that need to be replaced, applied differently, applying the tiles in a different fashion, filling gaps on the heat, tiles, forward flap geometry, all these things that could be fixed by replacing materials and then something physical with the rocket that needed to be changed. But number one is the one that's fascinating, and I'm glad they call it out because and that's the point of their post, I believe, is missing inspection protocol. Different teams, different methods. Damage was fixed in over a year. So all these other fixes, the longest fix took 6 months for all the material needs, and the shortest was fixed in hours. But this number one, it took over a year to fix, and they conclude the scariest mistake was the chain reaction, but the hardest mistake was that inspection protocol. Number one, changing hardware is easy. Changing how people work is hard. So I think you can see there where I am getting really where I would be interested in diving into that subject, because it's very, very similar in software, just in business in general, right? When we need to fix something, that can be a relatively easy fix. It's stuff, it's things. We buy a new one, we buy another one. With software, we get a new software platform. We refine the software that we have. We're talking about combining different solutions and different ways that we can do that. And then these are all things we can do and we can act upon and usually can do quickly. But when it comes to changing process, when it comes to changing how people work, the hardest thing, absolutely the hardest thing. And that's why I titled today's show The Path of Most Resistance, because it's something that, once again, is well known. It should not come as a revelation to anyone. I think everybody realizes this. We all know it, that our habits and the habits of our companies and our departments, those are the things that end up becoming the hardest thing to overcome and change when we need to change. So the problem is that I think we tend to go then through all those other fixes first, those which need to be done, but we swap them out. We do the material fixes, hoping that'll be enough, hoping that we can do the material fixes and it'll fix things enough that we don't have to wrestle with what is really tough, which is, Joe down in the in whatever department who does things XYZ way, and he's really committed to his process and using his Excel spreadsheet and whatever else he's got going. Getting people to understand, even initially, that maybe their perspective, their way that they've even viewed their job, is part of what's getting in the way of, as a company, us jumping to the next level of effectiveness and efficiency. And that's the hardest thing, because we have to look in the mirror and realize we're part of the problem. We're the problem. And that's just very hard realization to come to, maybe because maybe we don't want to see it not just because we think it will be hard to change, we don't want to change, but maybe we really don't know that we can change, that there is another path there for us, and we haven't been able to convince ourselves that it would really be better. And deep down, we whatever feels comfortable to us always seems like the better solution. So that's also why I wanted to frame this in the path of most resistance, because we need to develop a sense, I think, that when we feel ourselves resisting something, there's a resistance that comes up. There's a resistance that comes up for us that we should recognize as us protecting just our old way, just us being lazy. And maybe not just lazy laying on the couch lazy, but just something in us that, we'd rather go where there's less resistance. Now, we don't want to do work, but we do want to go where there's less resistance and still get the work done rather than steering toward the most resistance. But often the path of most resistance, when we're considering the things, ways to improve things in our department or business or in our lives, when we feel that resistance, we need to realize that could be telling us something. That could be like a compass for us. When you feel that resistance, instead of the instinctive drawing away, learn to recognize when you're tempted to do that and instead steer toward it. Steer toward it. Look at it like a workout, like you're going to the gym, right? If you're going to the gym, you're looking for resistance. You're looking for that weight and that lift. You're looking for the things that are going to give you that workout because you want to advance, you want to improve, you want to build muscle, you want to improve your health, and you know that resistance is going to do that. And in life, a lot of these things are the same way, where you sense that resistance, it isn't a bad thing. And in a culture where we're pretty committed to our comfort, we develop a very opposite instinct. If it hurts and if it's uncomfortable, it must be bad, right? And that's the instinct we need to get away from if we really want to solve problems. If we really want to solve problems and not just get past the thing for today. And that's a whole nother issue. But we do need to get in mindset of where we want to solve problems. We want to find better solutions. I think is the best way to move forward. So in doing that, step one to me that I thought of for doing that can be beware of the low-hanging fruit. Beware of low-hanging fruit. The phrase low-hanging fruit has become a joke, an inside joke, most places that I've worked, because we all can tend to say it. We identify, look, here's the low-hanging fruit on this project. And suddenly we sound like we're running an orchard because there's low-hanging fruit everywhere. And we're able to move things forward and be very productive by going after the low-hanging fruit. Well, beware of low-hanging fruit. It's just that it's not always going to be the thing that is best and that moves you forward.
Cookie's junk! I like a cookie.
Right? We like that low-hanging fruit. We do. And we can still go after that, but we can't do it at the expense of going after the bigger issues. It's not that. So don't avoid the low hanging fruit. Don't be like, it's low hanging fruit, so I'm not going to grab it. Go ahead and do that, but don't deceive yourself into thinking that by grabbing what's easy, what's readily available, things that can be fixed quickly, that you don't need to go after the fruit at the top, that you don't need to weed and plan for long term. You can't just get your little dopamine hit by, I can check these things off my list and I feel good. Well, that's great for the day. Go ahead and do it, but do not mistake that for real progress. For the progress that you need. Look out. Don't be blinded by the low-hanging fruit, and it keep you from doing the long-term good things, right? Because if we do that and we ignore the big issues, Just like in the example from the article that I showed, if we ignore that big issue, that procedural issue that needed to be taken care of, that people needed to be retrained and there needed to be a new process, if that had been avoided, they could have made all the material changes and they were still going to keep running into problems, recurring problems. You know, does that sound familiar? Does that feel familiar when you're doing a lot of work, when you're handling a lot of things, and yet the real problems, underlying problems, never seem to get resolved? Well, that's because things will only get worse. Things will only get worse if we only deal, or grab the low hanging fruit, things that are quicker and easier to fix, and then don't come up with a plan to deal with the underlying problems, the foundational problems. Things will only get worse.
You see them on the streets, misshapen and rust covered.
I mean, it's just waiting. It's a problem waiting to rear its head again. And it's so important to identify that this is what we do, that this is what you're doing. uh, Again, because when you're handling all the other issues, all the other issues on that list that SpaceX was dealing with were issues that needed to be dealt with. They were important things. They were material changes. But without the process change, there was going to be a situation where there was ongoing issues. They were going to have to continually have a list of the smaller things that were going bad. Okay? Of the smaller things that were going bad that they could fix more readily, but they were going to have to keep the list would change, but they'd still be coming up with new things every time. So they needed to fix the procedural problem underneath it all as well. And it took over a year. Other things fixed in a matter of months to hours. This took over a year for them to get to, but they did fix it, and they needed to. They had to. So, and if we don't do that, it will only get worse. The problem only degrades just because you're ignoring it. It's not going to solve itself, and you can feel like it will because you're fixing enough of these other material things. You're buying new software, you're moving to a new building, you're getting new equipment, whatever it is, and that mitigates a lot of the problems, and it makes you feel like, okay, well, if we do enough of these things, maybe the other thing will just take care of itself. And it doesn't. It just gets worse in the background and then jumps up and bites you at a time that is the worst for you. That's always when it's going to show itself and rear its ugly little head. So now, having said all that, it's important to remember that it isn't one or the other. It isn't one or the other. It isn't, oh, we just need to plan long term, and so forget about the short term stuff, because if we handle the big long term stuff, and this is where I can err because I tend to look at everything long term, and so I tend to minimize the short term because I see the underlying issues and I want to get after those, and sometimes then I'm blind to the gains that can be made, the easy things that can be fixed in the meantime that are a help to teams immediately and that can move everything in a right direction. So that's the other side of that coin. So we want to do both. It's not one thing. It's not one thing or the other, and we need to realize that. Otherwise, we're going to go from one ditch to the other. But if we do both, keep a focus on both, deal with the short term now, and have a plan for the long term and execute it, then we can handle all of it, and it all works together to land us at a very good place.
This is what we in sales call a win-win scenario.
So that's something that we really want to focus on, is having that dual plan, right? That you take care of the short-term things, the thing that only takes an hour, the thing that only takes a week, the thing that only takes a month, the thing that only takes a couple months. We're doing those at the same time as we're revamping the process and sometimes even the systems that undergird what we do in our business. Okay. So that's very important to do and to not lose sight of. And again, this type of thing is it's wonderful to come across articles, posts like this because it highlights these things so well. And I do find that a good place to get these inspirations is from businesses that deal with things that are far more important than what most of us deal with. In space flight, obviously, no margin for error. You're dealing with lives, literally. It's life or death. They have to get it right. And so that's a great place to go to find when you're looking for the best way to do things. Well, learn from people who have a lot on the line, who must succeed, who cannot fail. How do they deal with it? And seeing a space company handle things these way makes sense. It's life or death. So they are improving their materials. They are changing out some of the physical equipment, but then they don't just sweep the bad process under the rug. They have a plan for getting those processes fixed. And obviously, you have to have adequate buy-in. Now, it's probably easier. I'm going to say in a lot of ways, it should be easier for those teams than to make those changes because they have so much on the line. It's easy to come in, right, and say, look, we need to do this for the safety of the astronauts. And we need to do this so the thing doesn't blow up. And in your business, maybe, probably it's not as dire. The consequences would not be as severe. And that's going to be your challenge, is helping your team to see the benefit. And you're going to have to spell out the benefit of the changes that you need to make once you identify where your processes are broken and what needs to change. Okay. But you need to do that. That's part of the job. That's part of what we have to do. And where the situation's reversed, we would need that done for us. If you want me to make a major change to the way I do things in my professional life, I do need to be sold on that. I do need to be given adequate reason. And that needs to happen so that you can get buy-in, because if you just think just by telling people and mandating it, which I still believe needs to happen at a point, that there does come a point where this is mandated this way, we have to do it. But do everything you can in the interim, in the meantime, to make it so that everyone understands as well as possible why you're doing what you're doing. It's got to be rational. It's got to be reasonable. I always try to follow my 3 E's, which, for a process and software, is it effective? Is it efficient? And then is it economical? Right? So you follow those, and that allows you to show that your framework and your decision is rational. You've done your homework too. Make sure you've done your homework, and what you're moving forward with is the best that you can find in your judgment, and take feedback and all of that, and make sure people feel heard. But then you go ahead and you move ahead with the bigger changes, the big changes. One thing I'll note on that is that it is helpful, I think, to acknowledge that it's a big change. I mean, acknowledge the pain that you're causing, that it is, so they don't think that you just don't even realize. They don't know what I do. They can't realize. A lot of times you can't realize completely, but you can look at it and understand, no, this is a big disruption in your department in the way you do things. And so let me tell you why it's worth that disruption, and take that on you. It is, even if you could just dictate, do this, you do everyone a favor by still take it on yourself. Take some obligation on yourself. It's like, yes, if I'm going to cause this discomfort, I'm going to show you where this is going to give you some advantage. I'm going to bring you into the process. And then that way you can avoid people trying to avoid it as much, hopefully, as much as possible. If you've got good people, then they should be able to at least see the rationale that you're using for why you want to go the direction you want to go. And there needs to be enough logic there, so there's something for you to give them. So those are the things that I'm thinking today on the subject. Beware of that low-hanging fruit getting in your way, blinding your eyes to the bigger things that need to be changed. Remember, it will only get worse if you ignore the bigger things that are broken in your business, the foundational things that might be broken, the bad habits, the bad process, the bad decisions that you're hanging on to too long. All those things. It'll only get worse. If something's broken and bad, it's only going to get infected and worse. Go ahead and clean that thing out and get after it. And then it's not one or the other. It's not one or the other. Just because we're saying, don't get blinded by the low-hanging fruit. Don't be afraid to go and pick it. Take that low-hanging fruit, take those wins, get things moving, but that cannot get in the way and cannot delay and cannot disrupt taking care of whatever the underlying problems were that caused the issues in the first place. We need to fix the foundation as we go. And especially if you're in a business where you're looking to grow it, which is everybody now, and that's a whole nother subject. It's crazy how everything just needs to grow and grow and grow indefinitely in our economy. But if you're looking for robust growth, then you cannot afford to ignore things that are wrong in the foundation. You cannot afford to ignore things that are wrong in your process and in your systems and the habits of your people and your departments and your habits as a company. They all need to be good. They need to be healthy, and they need to be able to bear weight when you need a process to work for you. You need to be able to rely on it. It needs to be as bulletproof as possible. So go back, fix those things now. Ask yourself, what can be fixed now, right? It's not one or the other. We need to do both. Go ahead, do the things that need to be done today, but don't let that blind you to the fact that there's still a long-term issues that probably need to be dealt with. So homework for today. Well, just a little bit different homework. It's not as practical as usual. I hope this isn't going too far off the beaten path, but I think it's good to imagine the correct end result that you want in whatever you're dealing with. What is the end result? What actually needs to be fixed or accomplished? What would the ideal scenario, the ideal resolution look like? And I think we need to imagine that so that we can understand the right things to fix. There are a lot of solutions that get floated that are in search of a problem because other companies are doing it. If you read any of my stuff, I put a lot of what's happening with AI right now in that category. It can be a solution that is in search of a problem, and we get into trouble with that. You need to start with, what are we trying to fix? What's broken? And think about that deeply. Not just the surface level, because if you think about what's broken, you usually can come up with a quick answer. Well, this one thing isn't working for us. This is the contact point, the pain point that we're feeling. But then think about it further. It's like, okay, and what's causing that? And what's causing that? And what's causing that? And there is a method out there, I know probably a lot of you use it, is exactly that. I think some packages, the four questions or 6 questions. But really, just to keep asking, and burrowing down on things until you get to the root cause. I do love me some root cause analysis, some RCA, because and that's important, very important, slightly different from the homework message here. But while I'm thinking of it, when something has gone wrong, you've triaged whatever went wrong, and you've gotten past the crisis point, it's so important to go back and do some root cause analysis as a company. This is something we do in tech, but as a company, you need to do that. How, and not who did this. Please don't be that person. Don't be that leader. Who did this? No, it's how did this happen? Where was the breakdown? As a team, let's find out where the breakdown was, and let's plug the hole. And for that to be healthy, though, you really have to not have the finger pointing out and looking at a person. It needs to be very clinical and just one look at where was the breakdown so we can fix it. That's it. We want to learn. And when you find a breakdown, don't assume that it's the breakdown, right? Back to our questions, dig deeper. Okay, here's where some things broke down. Why did that break down? Okay, and then why did that break down? Dig as deep as you can. Get to the roots of it all. true root cause analysis. But then doing all that, now imagine the correct end result. What is it that we wanted to happen? How did we want this to go? What is the end result we need to get to? And you might want to do a little first principles thinking on that then, because maybe you started out with some wrong assumptions at the beginning of making whatever process you have now. So maybe you need to go all the way back to the beginning then and is it we want to accomplish? What are the ways we can do that? And don't get caught up by, you can talk yourself out of anything because, well, this way is going to take this much work and this way is going to take that much work. You're not looking for the easiest lift. You're looking for what is best and what is the most effective, because that's going to be worth your time. That's going to have the most value for you. So take a breath, pour a cup of coffee, and then try to imagine what is the correct end result for this thing we're trying to solve for. What did we want? What did we want it to do? And then when you're coming up with any new process, even it's the same way. Everything should be, look, where are we trying to go? What are we trying to get to? Again, sounds simple, right? But we really don't do that. We let urgent issues of the day drive us to building our process and building our software and building our companies. And then we look back after 6 months or a year and wonder how we got where we are. So we've got to be more intentional than that. You've got to be more intentional than that. Try to imagine the correct end result. So beware the low-hanging fruit. It will only get worse. The big issues will only get worse if you ignore them. But it's not one or the other. Get the low-hanging fruit done. Get the daily, monthly stuff done, and those fixes done. But then also keep planning for the big picture. Look at if there's underlying root causes, and take the time and get the plan in place to fix those as well, even if it's going to take over a year. It's going to take over a year. Better get started now. It's not going to go away. But if you do all of that, the reward at the end is things are as well. We have real goals. We know where we're going. We know what we're trying to achieve.